What I love about this, Christina, is that most people, they hear the word contract, they hear the word legal, and they want to run away screaming, right? They're like, no, no. This is the place to ask questions. This is the place to take notes. This is the place to learn strategy. Welcome to the Visible Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Lewis, and this is the podcast you'll love listening to week after week. After a history in Hollywood, I know what it takes to get visible. And as an entrepreneur, you don't have to keep feeling frustrated and trapped, not able to get yourself out there. Myself, my guests, and even my family are here to lift you up, guide you, and give you powerful ideas so that you can get your unique voice into the online space. Ready? Let's do it.
And action.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. This is an exciting episode because most of you are going to think that legal stuff is boring. So I want to help you change that opinion, and there is no one better to help you change that opinion than my friend, Christina Scalera. Christina, welcome to the Visible Entrepreneur Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. I'm so excited to be here.
This is going to be a blast. And if you have not heard of Christina, let me give you a little bit of background on her. Christina is the attorney and founder behind The Contract Shop, a contract template store for creative entrepreneurs, wedding professionals, and coaches. These are her wonderful words. She loves to nerd out with contracts and the client experience. What I love about this, Christina, is that most people, they hear the word contract, they hear the word legal, and they want to run away screaming, right? They're like, no, it'll just be fine. I'll just ignore it. It doesn't exist. La, 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 la. Especially like with, this is now past the date, but the GDPR stuff, and they're like, privacy policies, and they just run. So in your words, why does this process excite you? Why do you love alleviating this pain point for other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I love the way you asked this question. So the reason why I get so pumped up about contracts and the legal aspects of your business, other than just totally being a nerd, obviously.
Love it.
The reason I get so excited is because it is what empowers you to do the things that you want to do visibly. And this is actually something new that I've been talking about a lot lately, because it's something that I've realized, like, if you are scared to put yourself out there because you feel like you don't have your legal stuff shored up, or if you if you're watching yourself put yourself out there but only in like a half-assed way because you know you don't have a contract to send to a client at the end of the day, it's really, really hard to go full throttle and put yourself out there and know that on the back end of things you've got it handled. You've got a contract ready to send within, the minute, like the hour, like however long it takes you to get that contract into the hands of the potential client. It's not a situation like I was in when I first started this business, where I took 2 weeks to get my first client a contract. And so I think a lot of the reason why that was happening is I was afraid to put myself out. Well, a lot of the reason I was afraid to put myself out there, I should say, is because I knew that at the end of the day, like, I was going to have to write a contract. I was going to have to send it to the client. I was going to have to find the software to put it in, to send it to the client. I was going to have to follow up with the client. Like, it was like all this stuff, right? Because that's kind of the blessing and curse of being a service provider, is that when you are providing a service, you do all the hard work in your marketing, and then you have like more hard work as a reward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
You find the graphic design client, and now you have to design the logo and the website and everything else.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's something enjoyable that you like. But yeah, I think it's just the fact that if you aren't confident in the resources and tools that you are relying on as a business owner, whether that's your LLC registration or your contract or your privacy policy, you are not going to put yourself out there in the full capacity that you could.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and I think that for me, like, the trademark of Visibility Vixen, like, totally came out of the blue. I was trying to trademark something else. I couldn't. So I literally scrolled through GoDaddy at all the domains I had. You know, we all have a million domains, and saw that and was like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this one. And once I finally got that certificate in my hands, I think that's when I really stepped into it. And so I think that a lot of people that are very creatively bent have a lot of resistance to contracts and, you know, copyrights and all that kind of stuff. But when you put that in place, there's some kind of switch that happens, I think, where there's not the same amount of hesitation. There's not the same amount of doubt. Like you can really feel confident about putting yourself out there. Have you found that to be the case with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you are feeling confident, then you are just, I mean, it's a natural progression. And so if you are having problems with visibility and you're not sure why, fixing some of these issues it's automatically going to lend itself to a greater, just a greater feeling that you are working well with people, that you are making the connections that you need to make, and that you are putting yourself out there in a big way that does ensure that you're getting enough people at the front end of your funnel to have at the back end of your funnel paying you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, girl. Yeah. I love that. It's true. And I think that I don't know. I think a lot of people have a lot of fear around contracts. So let's talk about the benefits of having one in terms of what does it really give your client when they sign a contract? How are you protecting them? How are you lifting them up? How are you really solidifying the journey that you're taking them on?
Well, it comes in a couple different parts, right? So if you are taking care of this from the beginning and you're more in the beginning stages of your relationship, this is relatively easy. You have time to implement a template. You have time to find a template. You have time to access our resources, read our blog, that kind of thing. And you're maybe downloading it, inputting your unique fields into it, and then you're moving on. Like that. It's all set up, ready to go, and now all you have to do is make yourself visible. That becomes your next and only task, because then at that point you're getting onto the phone with people, you're having those consults, and you're sending them your proposal. If you're in a later stage of your business, if you maybe haven't considered this to start with, this is a little bit more difficult, I think, because you already have systems and processes, and if you're missing those, like that is your system, is like not having a system. And so it becomes really, really difficult to find the time. It becomes difficult to find the resources potentially. And it gets hard because you're like, well, how does this jive with like what I'm already offering? How do I combine the services that I have now? And so it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be difficult. It's just a little bit harder if you're at that later stage of business.
Gotcha. So what I want to do now is I kind of want to open this up to talk about things that you don't really get to talk about a lot. I know so many interviews can be so standard and it's like this question, this question, this question. What's something that's really exciting you right now that you want people to know about?
Really exciting right now. I mean, by the time this has come out, I don't think it's exciting, but everybody else seems to think this GDPR stuff is so exciting.
Exciting,
am so
terrifying,
over it.
nerve-wracking, like pits are sweating, screaming in your closet. Like I've been there, I've done it all.
Michelle, I don't want to come off as like jaded or arrogant or something, but for most of us out there in the US, Canada, Australia, etc. Now, this is going to be different if you're in the UK, if you're in the EU. People are really freaking out for what I believe to be very little reason. And the reason I say that is because I'm a little bit different than most attorneys. I like to approach things from a practical perspective. And so, yes, there are people out there that are happy to scare you into buying their product or whatever they're selling around this thing, and that's not me. Because practically looking at this, it probably doesn't even apply to most of the people that I've seen freaking out about it. So whether that applies to your business or not, I can't tell. I don't give legal advice to non-clients. It's just too general. But what I can say is that when looking at something like that, I think people put these like blinders on and they focus on like the echo chamber, what everybody else is repeating, like, oh, we have to all change our freebies now. We can't have like, we have to have this like opt-in, but it only can go to the freebie and not to our actual list. And we have to have like all these other, I mean, take a step back, realize what's actually happening, right? Like they are implementing these changes. And the reason they're doing that is because of data breaches, where people's credit cards were stolen, like millions of people's their credit cards were stolen. They're going to be looking at the companies that have access to that information before they're looking at the little guys like us. And it's interesting because what I've also seen with this is the little guys are paying way more attention to it and being way more hyper cautious than say like the LastPasses and the Clickfunnels and the lead pages of the world.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Got my first email from Clickfunnels yesterday, which is May 23rd. And I was like, oh my God, the deadline's May 25th. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, the little guys are doing like reconsents to their whole list when this only applies to the EU. I guess because they're afraid, they don't have a way to segment it out, and they're afraid that they are collecting information from somebody in the EU and they would be found to like have to pay some kind of fine or something. What I can say is that in practical terms, when we are looking at these big legal things, it's just really important to take a step back and say, what is actually going to happen here? Okay, it's going to go into effect on May 25th. They are not going to send out like they don't have any resources, so they're not going to send out like police that are scanning the internet with like robots to tell them like, oh my gosh, the site is awful and atrocious. Instead, what they're going to be doing is waiting for people to have complaints, likely, and those complaints are going to have to be copious. So lots of complaints coming in over a short amount of time, and then maybe they're going to start to look into that. Much more likely, they're going to be looking at these bigger companies. And so what I'm really interested in as an attorney is like, how are these bigger companies, like what's their move in June and July, once we start to get some better clarity and guidance around this kind of stuff. I think it's way too early to have a freak out session. And it's really kind of a shame because people are freaking out at the wrong time. And this means that they're going to pay attention to it now. They're not going to pay attention to it later when it actually is going to have some kind of important information that does apply to their business, because we've kind of like beaten this horse. Like it's exhausted at this point. Nobody wants to hear about it anymore. Nobody wants to get another email from like their SaaS providers about their new privacy policy or whatever. And so I don't know. Does that answer your question, or is like?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, this is going to be coming out on July 23rd. So it'll be a couple months after all this has gone down. But I think that it's important to talk about because the key that we're getting down to is sudden fear. And so when an announcement comes out like this, a lot of people who are too small to ever really endure a legal snafu are looking at this and going, I want to make sure that I'm compliant with everything and oh my goodness and all that. So I think the lesson here is take your time, do what you need to do. Because like for me, sure, I adjusted some things because I saw it as an opportunity to clean my list, to make sure that my list in the future, if any other country passes a similar law, would be compliant. Like, sure. And this isn't legal advice, but this is just saying, look at how can you take an information that is presenting itself as sudden fear, learn what you can from it, implement it in a way that makes sense from your business, and then move on. Not have this huge obsessive thing like has been happening online. Do you agree?
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I think it's like, again, we need to look at legal things that are practical and as they apply to your business. And like I said, nobody knows. Like everybody right now is speculating as we're recording this. And so I have heard a lot of fear about the freebies and the opt-ins, and it's coming from a place of like, okay, what is the most hyper conservative option that we can take based on the information that we know? Right. And that's just not how the law works, and that can be really frustrating for people because what's happening right now with the GDPR stuff is they are getting like the guidelines that attorneys are putting out there and talking about on social media and things like that. They're giving you like the black, but the problem is the law is a lot more gray than that, and so we just have to wait for this thing to play out and move into the gray area and see what that is. Like, how far do we get into the gray area before the buck stops and before, these are things that we actually have to implement and change. What are some of the bigger companies that have better resources than we do as little entrepreneurs, bigger legal teams? Like, what are they doing? Look to them as a model. And just like watch how this is going to change the industry. Because again, like this only applies if you are serving people in the EU, and most of us have just a very, very small portion of people from the EU, maybe from the UK, probably even less from other EU countries. Maybe you could tell me more about that. I don't know why. There just seems to be like less entrepreneurs from the EU than there does from the US, from Canada, from Australia. So again, it's not affecting those territories yet. There is nothing there. So I think it's just a situation that has escalated, and I'm not exactly sure why. I haven't put my pulse point on that. But personally, it's not something that we're freaking out about at the contract shop. We're making changes. We're trying to keep people informed and provide products that that do that. But at the same time, it's not something that I'm going to be, staying up at night and worrying about. You can't.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's all about being adaptable. Things are going to change legally with social media, with, website, with hosting, with all that stuff. That's what being an entrepreneur is. And I think that a lot of times you want that safety net. You want to be able to buckle down the hatches. And these are the only systems and the only rules that I'll ever have to know about through the rest of my life. And it just doesn't work like that. So I think that no matter what is coming at us, you just learn to adapt and change as necessary and then keep going. Don't make it a reason to stop everything you're doing and panic and scour the interwebs and, have that kind of a mentality about it. So I think what you're trying to say is just step back, watch the ebbs and flows, take action when necessary, but don't panic just because everyone else is panicking. Awesome. So let's chat a little bit about what you think can be something that most entrepreneurs fail to do legally that would actually make their lives a lot easier in the long run.
Yeah, one of the things that people fail to do is just look at what their experience is with their clients. So I think it happens by default. We start to get into like what are we actually providing as a service provider? And okay, sure, there's a contract that gets signed. We start working with the clients, but we forget about all the little touch points along the way that can help make it a better experience for that client and with them. And so one of the things that they can do from the very start is almost take like an audit of that client experience, of that process. So of course there's like service providers out there that will do this for you, but I don't think that's necessary. You can do this yourself and see where you can improve. If you're really struggling, maybe you bring somebody in, or if you have the resources to do so. But my hunch is that most people are, like I said, just sending out that proposal. It's including the contract and the invoice, but it's not actually holding the person's hand through it. And so while you as a service provider, as an entrepreneur, you've done this a million times before, the problem is that your client, it might be their first time ever hiring someone, and this might be the largest amount of money they've ever spent in their business, or, on whatever it is that you are providing as a service. So we see this a lot. I see this a lot with wedding photographers, right? Like most people in their life have not laid down like thousands of dollars, sometimes $5, $6, $8, $9,000 for a wedding plan or photographer. And, so for us, we're like, oh yeah, normal. Like we're a good photographer. We're going to show up when we say we are, like not a big deal. We sign the contract, we'll show up. You're going to get awesome photos. Great. But from the client's perspective, they are seeing that big contract, that big scary invoice come in with like a huge like 50% deposit, and they are horrified. And all they have to go on is like your website, maybe a couple of blog posts, a friend's recommendation, or just like what they've heard through the grapevine and nothing else. And so looking at that and saying, well, how could we make this better? Let's add some touch points in there. Let's make our consultations a little bit longer for these bigger packages. Let's add something like a client magazine to our proposal that they can go through and they can visually look at what it is that we are offering to them. So if we have really tight policies around cancellations, or just the things that tend to come up a lot in your client discussions, those are the things to include in the client magazine. So those are in your contract, they're in the client magazine, and that's what's happening in order to increase those client touch points. And then finally, like just paying attention to the client's experience, like actually going through your contact form, actually seeing what it is like start to finish to have a consultation with you and get that proposal. Are things being formatted correctly? Like, is this coming through in a way that they are not able to download on their computer? Is that why you're maybe losing out on potential leads? So those are the types of things that you could very easily take 10 minutes, go through your process, Put it on your calendar like once or twice a year. It doesn't have to be an activity you do a lot. And just look for ways, because when you focus on something, that's what grows.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you touched on that. I think a client magazine is such a beautiful idea. And I think that, I don't know if this is a software you use, but we actually have an interview coming up next month. That's going to be, I'm actually at Dubsado headquarters with Becca and with Biz, and we're going through and just having a great time. And you don't have to use Dubsado if you're listening to this, but you need something that can help take some of the pressure off of you from having to set alarms on your phone, to email your clients and to remember to follow up and to send the contracts and to do all that stuff. Try to systematize that process as much as you can so that you can really focus on that initial email they're getting and that the contract's laid out really beautifully, and spend that dedicated time and then step back knowing that it's a little bit more on autopilot. Is this something that you do, Christina, and have you seen success with it?
Yeah. I mean, anywhere you can automate is obviously, it's just a win. That's somebody that you can, you don't have to pay money for a position on your team anymore. That's something that is just happening anytime. And so it's funny, I actually was just talking to somebody about how easy it would be for people that, like if you find that a lot of people are and maybe you don't know this, maybe you're like not super into the numbers, but if you find that you're losing out on a lot of clients, just creating like how many people are landing on that contact form or that application form, like where are the clients coming in? How many people are landing there then versus how many people see that page, how many people are actually submitting a form. And then from the form, like how many people are actually getting onto some kind of consult call with you, how many people are from that consult call booking with you, and now you've gone from maybe total cold traffic that found you via a Pinterest pin, read your blog post, they were interviewed on your podcast, Michelle, like whatever it was, and they've gone from there to being a client of yours. And so finding the bottlenecks in that process can be incredibly helpful. And it's something that, again, doesn't have to cost you money. You can do this. Like we have this story, especially I think a lot of women have a story that they're bad at math. And so they can't look at basic numbers and do the math. I promise you, this is like, I am an idiot at math and I'm able to do the numbers here. So I promise you, you can do this. Like you just have to rewrite that story, just rip the Band-Aid off, get it done. And then it's like so incredible because we're out there and we're spending all this money on like different courses and coaches and education. And all we have to do sometimes is look at where things are going poorly and where things are going well and maximize the things that are going well. So you might notice that like everybody that's landing on your page is converting onto they're signing up through your application or your contact form. And so if that's the case where you're seeing that really high conversion, but then like once they get on a call with you, everybody's dropping off, what that can tell you is that you have maybe like a really great application, like the copy's good. It's maybe like a very user-friendly design, more like a type form design than like a very clunky, like 1999 type form. But there's something happening on that consultation where you're losing clients. And so that's a lot more informative than just being like, I don't have enough clients. Let me try Instagram one more time. And so, you know, you can even do this with your legal processes and the legal side of your business by saying, you know, am I losing people when they see my contract? Is there a better way that I could be presenting it to them? So for example, I just got insurance for my other business, and it was like the most painful process. I'm like, how easy would this be for the insurance company to send me their contract and their application in a way that was electronic and easy for me to access, that I didn't have to print off and take a picture or like fax it back to them. I don't even know where I would find a fax machine. Those are the kinds of things that show your clients that you care and that reduce the friction in the booking process so that they're so much more likely to actually read the contract and follow the rules and be excited to work with you rather than thinking, I just don't like her. They're not going to actually externalize like why they don't like you. They're just going to be like, this is too hard. I give up.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, that's so juicy. I love it. So, and I love the idea of kind of breaking it down and knowing your numbers so you know where a little bit of the weakness is. We all have it. It's just going to be in a different space for everybody. So brilliant point, my darling. So as we wrap up, you have an incredible call to action to share with people, an incredible gift. I'm really excited to hear about this. Let us know what it is.
Yeah, so you guys can go to thecontractshop.com/Vixen, and that is going to get you a list of all of our freebies. So it's not like one freebie, this freebie. You guys can pick which one. It's very clear which one, what topics these are on, and so you can pick the one that's right for you and your business. Whether you're getting started and you're like, I need to get legit, or if you are more advanced, or if you're like dealing with more specific concerns. So I work with a lot of like calligraphers that have copyright issues. So that's going to be very clear that like this one is for copyright, this one is for getting yourself legit. Or you can just grab all of them. I mean, it's totally up to you guys. So
I love that. And I love that your passion is to help people with this point that can be very painful, can be very confusing and frustrating, and honestly can be one of the sticking points that makes people give up. So if you're listening and you're at this point of feeling very frustrated, not knowing what you need to have in place contractually, I highly recommend that you follow Christina, that you go to the contract shop, that you help figure out where it is that you need support, and that you take action. Very exciting to chat about this in a non-stressful way. So Christina, thank you so much for coming aboard. And do you have any parting wisdom to give our listeners?
I always say the same thing. It's so cliche, Michelle, but like just get started. Just start doing it, and it's gonna. Well, I don't know if I can say that. I already cussed on your podcast. I'm sorry.
That's
but
okay.
Like, it's going to suck the first time you put something out there, and that's okay, because that means that the next time you put it out there, it's going to be super awesome because you'll have that first draft out there, and now it's just great.
Yeah. And I really struggled with all this kind of stuff. So you are not alone if you're listening. And for me, I literally could not even address my own bookkeeping and finances. I would get panic attacks and freak out. It's so lame, but I think it's because I had a few issues in that regards growing up. And so I just started really easy and connected my account to Wave, and then just did one categorized expense per day. It sounds ridiculous, but we all have issues that totally paralyze us. So just break it down, take that first tiny step, and maybe that's just clicking on the link to get the freebie today, and then just start building from there. So thanks so much, Christina. This was such a blast. If you love this episode, let us know. Leave a 5-star review. Come on over to the Facebook group, tag Christina in your social media, and let her know how this episode impacted you. All the links are going to be below, including that content upgrade. So be sure to check that out. And in the meantime, we'll be back with you next week for another awesome interview. See you next time. If you're struggling with feeling like you're totally alone in this business, which so many of us have been there, feeling like you have no one to talk to, no one who gets it, no one to keep you accountable, no idea what steps to take for that week, I want to invite you to join the Visibility Mastermind. This is an intimate gathering of entrepreneurs who help keep each other accountable, who get more and more access to me every single week, and who get weekly lessons to keep them inspired and strategic inside of their business. I have seen our students do incredible things, including getting able to take over Camping World's Facebook page for a day, launching their course, running a successful ad, getting featured in places they never thought they would because of being a part of the Visibility Mastermind. So if this feels like a good fit for you, be sure to join right now at visibilitymastermind.com. I hope you loved this episode as much as I did. Now, we're all about building a tribe here at The Visible Entrepreneur, so be sure to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and then head on over to the Facebook group. It's a great place where you can practice your video, live stream, and really enjoy the community that we have built. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next episode. Now get out there and get more visible.
That's a wrap.